We chose to work with subject-verb agreement. Without knowing subject-verb agreement, it is very hard to structure most sentences. Therefore, we think it's a good English structure to learn at an early stage of your English education. There are 24 pupils in the group that we are going to teach. They are 11 or 12 years old and they are in 5th grade. This lesson will be purely English focused, without links to other subjects or study fields. After the lesson, we want pupils to be able to find the subject and the verb in any simple sentence. We want them to be able to recognize faulty subject-verb agreement and correct it. Furthermore, we want the pupils to get more comfortable with speaking and writing in English, as well as communicating in English. We, the teachers, will evaluate them by paying attention to their progress during the different exercises. We would also test their subject-verb agreement skills as well as other English skills in a test at a later date. The aims and goals of our planned lesson are supported by the following extract of Lgr 11. Through this education, the pupils will be given opportunity to develop well-rounded communication skills. This skill encapsulates being able to understand spoken and written English, to be able to articulate oneself and interact with others through speaking and writing, and to be able to adapt one's language for different situations, purposes, and recipients. This communicative skill also entails linguistic certitude and to be able to use different strategies to support a conversation and solve problems that arise when linguistic knowledge is lacking.
Materials. The materials we will use are dictionaries from English to Swedish and vice versa, 24 worksheets, 24 copies of a short story, whiteboard, extra assignments for the students that finishes early, and finally 10 pictures of an activity, a verb, and 10 pictures of a subject. 12 sets of different pictures.
In the first section of the lecture, each pupil gets a worksheet with a text from Cat in a Hat's learning library, which will serve as an introductory exercise to the topic. The pupils are then instructed to read the text first and look and think about how the subjects and verbs are used. We find this text to have quite simple vocabulary, so the pupils can focus on the structure of the sentences without struggling to understand the words. In the text, the relevant subjects and verbs are marked, bold and underlined respectively, to make it easier for 5th grade pupils to recognize them. The worksheet, moreover, also includes a glossary with some words maybe unknown to them. We instruct the kids to read this text out loud and then observe the subjects and the verbs. We, the teachers, encourage them to share their thoughts regarding the form and relation of the subjects and verbs. Following the kids' thoughts about the verbs and subject they find, the teacher starts to write it onto the whiteboard, arranging them in groups. The thought is that the pupils would come up with different ways of organizing the verbs and subjects, but we lead the discussion towards singular and plural forms and arrange them in a chart. This chart is going to be the base for explaining the grammar and to find rules. The conclusion we draw is that subjects and verbs must agree with one another in number, that is to say singular or plural form. Thus, if a subject is singular, its verb must be also singular. If a subject is plural, its verb must also be plural. Furthermore, we point out the different roles of the letter S in English endings, that is to say when and how it stands for plural, for genitive, or for verbs in third person singular. By the next worksheet, the pupils will use the grammar rules that we, together with the class, established and learned. In this exercise, the pupils have to fill in the gaps using the right form of the verbs. This exercise will introduce difficulties like what subject is indeed singular and whether singular or plural verb is used in certain cases, for example in case of indefinite pronouns or compound subject joined by and or. Since the rules are still new, the pupils can work in small groups to be able to talk about possibilities and try to set the rules in use, as well as to enhance learning, by talking about it and explaining it to each other. The third and final exercise planned for this lesson is a picture game by which the pupils working in pairs can formulate a sentence by given only a verb and a subject. In this game, one pupil takes one card from the subject set while the other pulls a card from the verb set. First, they have to discuss whether the picture shown on the card depicts a singular or a plural subject, and then by using the correct form of the verb, they write a sentence. For example, if the subject card has the subject Mary and Clara and the verb has the to eat, their sentence can be Mary and Clara eat ice cream every Saturday.
Conclusions. All of the activities we chose tie back to the aims and goals that we covered in learning outcomes. In the first exercise, we would use inductive learning by reading a story to the class and then ask them to raise their hands to identify subjects and verbs. We do this because we want the students to think for themselves. Thornberry says on page 54 that by this kind of exercise, the kids will discover the rules by themselves, which makes it more likely to fit in their understanding. This will make the rules more memorable and more meaningful for them because the students are then more actively involved in the learning process. With the second exercise, they will practice the rules and try to consolidate what they learned so far. After they are finished with the worksheet, they will cross-reference their answers with their classmates and compare their answer, and in that way they will learn how to communicate with others. Thus, the students get an opportunity to fulfill the aims and goals of LGR 11 that we covered in learning outcomes. This last exercise serves to pique the students' interests and maintain their focus during the last minutes of the lesson. Such a feat is accomplished through changing media and tempo to pictures and communication. They also get to increase their vocabulary when looking up words in the dictionaries. They learn how to work in pairs, and by doing so, the students that are not comfortable to speak increases their self-confidence in speaking the language when in pairs.